30 days to pay. Or lose my grandfather's house. That's what the yellow sleeve on my mailbox said. Bright as a hazard sign, loud enough to ring in my ears. Under fluorescent lights I hadn't stood beneath yet. A woman named Sloane Avery, president of the Juniper Hollow Association Blazer, sharp smile sharper, told me the debt went back to 1972 and followed the property, not the person. And if I didn't comply, the countdown started that second. I remember thinking this has to be a prank then, looking at her clipboard and that neat little sleeve and realizing no, this is real. This is my life now. It had been a quiet Tuesday at 6 a.m. Porch light still on, coffee, steaming cedar fence I'd built by hand catching the first light like honey, when her white SUV slid to the curb and she stepped out like she owned the asphalt. No hello, no introduction, just a tape measure whipping against cold air and a verdict delivered like a weather report. 7.5 inches over, she said, tapping the tape against my fence non-compliant. She slid the yellow sleeve on my mailbox with 2 fingers, like crowning a cupcake, then handed me an invoice full of numbers that felt like coordinates to Mars. Outstanding dues since 1972, plus current violations, fence height, shutter color variants, unauthorized garden rows, non-standard mailbox, total due $96,480. 30 days. I said I was negative 20 in 1972, and she smiled like a teacher with a tired kid. Your grandfather signed our original charter, she said, lifting her phone to narrate into some app, documenting non-compliant perimeter fencing, potential value impact for Juniper Hollow. Neighbors slowed their dog walks. Curtains twitched. A kid pretended to tie his shoe at the end of my driveway just to listen. I told myself to breathe to keep my voice level to ask for proof before I answered a single allegation. You'll see it, she said, pivoting back to the SUV, and then she threw it over her shoulder so the whole street could hear. Welcome to the neighborhood. But Carter. It didn't sound like a welcome, it sounded like a dare. You know what I mean. I answered optics with optics because I didn't know what else to do. By noon, I had a green sign planted by the porch. Historic restoration in progress. Serif font classy, the kind of thing you see in front of museums. By 2-3 more yellow sleeves appeared not just on my property, but on the public easement by the mail cluster where everyone walks past and reads addresses like a true crime podcast. My contractor Tyler called, sounding spooked. I'm getting weird calls asking about permits and insurance, he said. Paper shuffling on his end. Nobody will give a name. This is weird, Jack. I don't bail on jobs, but I've never had strangers call my insurer about a porch. Then came the app. I didn't even know we had a neighborhood app until it introduced me to myself. A montage labeled Concerning Activity at Non-Compliant Property started bouncing around local feeds, jump cuts and wrong angles, and captions that did most of the smearing. Me pointing at string line with Tyler became me yelling. Me measuring along a stake became me disputing the property line. A slow pan across stacked lumber looked like I was stockpiling contraband. Comments followed the way they do. Aggressive tendencies impact on values, unsafe work environment. Yeah, that happened. By Thursday, there was a flyer on the Community Board Property Standards Committee, 7 p.m. Agenda items listing my address like charges. I brought a folder and a stubborn kind of hope. Permits emails from the city, an old photo of my grandfather Henry, smiling on this same porch with neighbors and coffee thermoses and a hammer hanging from his belt. Sloane had a clicker and a PowerPoint, and a room can tilt fast when graphs show up first. "This is not about codes," she said into a mic that made her voice warm and certain. "It's about standards." When I tried to answer, a security guard in a polo moved to my elbow and said not unkindly, "Sir, you'll need to leave the room. Imagine getting escorted out of a meeting about your own house by a guy hired by someone who doesn't live on your street. That particular sting sits behind your teeth." I walked out steady, but my chest was a snare drum. The twist arrived the next morning under my door, a black and white photo, edges soft with age. My house, when Cedar Trace still had more sky than roofs. 3 figures where my driveway is now a man and a woman, and a girl, maybe 10, holding a "for rent" sign, with a face I recognized even through time. It was the shape of Sloane's nose, the set of her eyes. And before I could decide if I was being dramatic, a second envelope slid under the door at lunch, with a yellowed index card inside Red Rock 1972. "Ask the lady with the azaleas." On the back, a sketch of my street, and a small X over the blue house with perfect flower beds. I'd waved at her for months without asking her name. That evening I knocked. She opened like she'd been timing my steps. 80-something bun-precise eyes that had measured men for decades. "I've been watching," she said, stepping aside, holding a plain shoebox with 2 hands, like state secrets. "Sloane is lying about your family. Her name was Evelyn Brooks." The shoebox smelled like old paper and lemon oil, clippings from the early 70s, about a proposed HOA, photos of my grandfather leading volunteer work days, a petition with 200 signatures, including hers arguing that the old agricultural parcels should be carved out if the HOA formed. Then came the clincher, a glossy brochure Sloane had used 2 years back, and on page 3, the same porch photo, same faces and thermoses, but with a caption that read, "Henry Carter, original board member, Community Improvement Day." 2 copies of the same moment, 2 opposite truths. "He never joined," Evelyn said, tapping the caption with a knuckle that had done real work. "We fought for the exemption, and we won. Sloane knows it. Her daddy still lost their place, and she's been angry ever since." That night I went hunting for proof inside my own roofline. I'd noticed a floorboard near the dormer sitting proud by a whisper and couldn't shake it. A pry bar and a gentle lift, and it came up like it was tired of pretending. Under it, a metal lockbox wrapped in an old canvas apron. The latch opened like it remembered my hand. Inside the trail, letters to the county kitchen table. Minutes a hand-sketched boundary map with notes in my grandfather's careful block script, and his copy of the charter with a margin note next to his name that read, "Ought a member. Property predates association. Agricultural exemption retained." I could have stopped there, but at the bottom was a newer roster page. Cleaner paper, brighter ink, and my grandfather's signature pasted so perfectly my stomach climbed into my throat. I know his signature. There's a little valley in the H he carved every time, and the valley on this roster matched his will with machine precision. Under a magnifier, you could see halo scars where someone had erased text that would have contradicted the whole story. Either Henry Carter was a time traveler with flawless penmanship, or someone had a printer and a grudge. That's when it stopped being just about my fence. It became about memory and who gets to write it. We met at Evelyn's Sunday afternoon. Me, Tyler, a quiet neighbor named Linda Chen, with a spreadsheet that could humble a tax auditor, and Jim from down the block. And we built a paper spine. Linda had tracked 12 Sloane complaints against homes mid-renovation over 2 years. Most dismissed by the city, all leaving bruises. She cites rules that were never adopted. Linda said, scrolling calmly or borrowed from other neighborhoods. It's about control, not safety. We assembled a petition for an emergency jurisdiction review, sleeved every piece of evidence in plastic, because plastic makes bureaucrats sit up straighter, and we walked it to the city clerk, like people who knew where they were going. The hearing felt like a gym on picture day. Chair Leon Ortiz opened with a gavel and patience. Sloane's attorney, a woman named Dana Pierce, presented first. Aerials charts claiming an 8% property value, dip tied to my fence and shutters. The roster with that cloned signature glowing on a screen. Voluntary membership established. Dana said, smooth as a marble countertop. Dues delinquent since 1972. I watched heads nod, because charts will do that to a room. Then I rolled the lockbox to the table and told the story the way small towns require, with receipts and a little humility. My grandfather could make a porch stand straighter just by talking to it, I said, and the room gave me a small laugh to stand on. I read the margin note handed up the petition with 200 signatures so they could feel the grit on the paper set Sloane's brochure beside Evelyn's original photo, so the caption could convict itself. I'm not here to win a Facebook thread, I said. Hands steady now. I'm here because you can't paste a man's name on a line he refused to sign and call it history. Chair Ortiz leaned in. Ms. Avery, he said, how do we reconcile your brochure's caption with the clerk's record and this original charter? Donna readied a lawyer's answer, but Sloane stood first, and for the first time her voice sounded human. You don't understand what his family did to mine, she said, staring at me like I was the last door in a burning house. My father lost our farm while Henry Carter delayed and grandstanded. We rented that house for a year. He made us leave. I held the sign in the yard and cried, and I swore I'd never let a Carter walk free under our sky again. The room went still. You could hear paper breathe. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. The reason under the rules was standing there in a navy dress, hands shaking. The council huddled for less than a minute. This council finds no HOA jurisdiction over the Carter parcel chair. Ortiz said, gavel poised. The property predates the association and retained its agricultural exemption. All notices and any associated surveillance equipment are to be removed immediately. The city will revise its intake process for HOA complaints. Ms. Avery considered this a formal caution regarding false filings and harassment. The gavel came down. It didn't echo, it landed. Relief wasn't fireworks. It was a long breath I'd been holding for weeks, finally leaving my body. Outside, people I didn't know squeezed my shoulder like they were checking I was solid. Evelyn handed me a thermos, because the past leaves you hungry. And a kid lowered his phone and clapped like he'd decided on his own. On my windshield was a thin envelope with a county seal and a hand-printed note at the bottom: you won the hearing. You haven't won the history. Tell the truth all the way, or it comes back. Maybe that was a neighbor trying to be dramatic. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was both. I don't hate Sloane. I hate what she did. And I'll fight anyone who turns paper into a weapon, because it's easier to bully than to build. But I can't hate the 10-year-old who lost her porch swing. That doesn't excuse forged signatures or public shaming, not even close. It just complicates the picture we love to flatten. So here's my ask, if you've watched this far. Where do you draw the line between safety and control, between community standards, and personal grudges, between rules that serve and rules that bruise? If you think justice landed clean here, say it. If you think I got off easy, say that too. If you've lived through a neighbor or an HOA using a badge and a microphone to push you around, tell us what happened. Drop your take in the comments, share your own receipts. And if someone out there is staring at a yellow sleeve at 6 a.m., give them a map so they don't break.